Hello and welcome. Here today on Technology Tuesday. Today we wanted to address the topic of the EGR valve, why it is worth deactivating the EGR valve or why maybe not. You can decide that for yourself at the end of the video. I would like to briefly point out that deactivating the EGR would void your vehicle's operating license. As a result, your car would no longer be roadworthy. That's why we are only discussing the technical part here. That's why we only do this for racing purposes. An EGR valve is there to redirect exhaust gases back into the combustion chamber so that these gases are burned twice, thereby improving emission values. That's what an EGR valve is actually for. However, by redirecting the exhaust gases back into the combustion chamber, we encounter the following problems. Point one, the biggest problem in my opinion is that you can get engine damage from an EGR valve, because the exhaust gases cause the entire intake tract to become sooty. As a result, the valves, the sensors, everything gets clogged and you hardly get any oxygen into the combustion chamber. We will now show you a picture and it will be displayed. This is what an engine looks like from the inside due to an EGR valve. And I think everyone can figure out for themselves that this is not good, as it results in less oxygen entering the combustion chamber, and with less oxygen in the combustion chamber, we can generate less power. Therefore, less power is generated, and as a result, your fuel consumption naturally increases because the combustion in the engine is no longer at 100%, but only at 50 or 40%, as the intake tract is simply reduced by 40%. That is point number one. This is the biggest reason why I believe that an EGR valve is crap. Point number two, why an EGR valve is also bad is that by recirculating exhaust gases, we have a lower oxygen content because this space is essentially blocked by exhaust gas. That would be the second point, why we can generate less power with an EGR. The fact that the EGR valve was only active during partial load operation applies only to older vehicles. The newer the cars, the stricter the emission regulations, of course. That's why it is now the case that the EGR valve is active across the entire RPM range. This is one of the reasons why we deal with deactivating EGR valves on a daily basis, because people find it important, as a completely clogged intake manifold is obviously a problem. I don't need to explain that, and this can of course lead to consequential damage. Such an EGR valve, when it is completely clogged, will be indicated as a fault because it can no longer close. The sensors detect this immediately, and thus you have a problem and need to have it repaired. Such a repair of the EGR valve can cost several thousand euros. Accordingly, you can prevent this by simply deactivating the EGR valve preventively, and then you have one less problem that could arise in the future. And the longevity of your engine is definitely extended because it doesn't get sooted up from the inside, and your combustion is simply much cleaner. And now you're naturally worried that your EGR valve will be detected directly during the vehicle inspection. That is not the case. When we deactivate an EGR valve, we have increased NOx values, but the number of particles is reduced, and the particles themselves become smaller. However, since NOx is not measured during an emissions test for vehicles with Euro 5 emission standards, as well as for vehicles with Euro 6 emission standards, this is not measured. For Euro 5 emission standards, an opacity value is measured, and for vehicles with Euro 6 emission standards, a particle count is conducted. Both exhaust measurement methods do not measure NOx. So I can confirm to you that if you deactivate an EGR valve, it will not be detected during an emissions test. Accordingly, this is absolutely irrelevant for the main inspection. So if you feel addressed and want to deactivate your EGR valve because you want to protect your engine, maybe because it's already broken, or you don't want it to break in the future, then check the video description now. Our homepage is linked there, and you can easily contact us through it. What you need now, so you don't have to worry in the future, is simply to make an appointment, have 30 minutes on the appointment day, and a fraction of the money that a repair would cost. And then we're done. If you're interested in more Tech Tuesday videos, we have a playlist for you here. Lastly, if you have a technical question that we haven't covered here yet, write it in the comments. If you like our content, feel free to subscribe and give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next video. Toodle-oo.